So after I finished doing all that in Ableton, I exported all the individual tracks and imported them into Logic, and I ended up with this. So I've got every track that I had there in Ableton now in Logic, but just the audio files. There's no MIDI here whatsoever, and I did this so I could do some extra shaping to the sound, EQing everything again separately, and then I mastered it on this as well. So the first thing I did was I put little markers so I could see where the breakdown is, where the intro is, and stuff like that. Just because it's difficult to tell with all these just being blue, whereas before you could quite easily see from the boxes where the beat was coming in and coming out. So this just makes it easier for me. I didn't do an awful lot. I did do a few things, like here on the hats I've added a bit crusher just to make it sound a bit more crunchy. So if we have a look at the file, it sounded like this, and then I've added the bit crusher and the S1 imager to make it sound wider, and also the spreader, which makes it sound wider as well. Another thing that I did do in Logic was shaping the sound as far as the spectrum. So I'll put things to the left and to the right and things like that, and adding reverb to give it some more depth and things. So again, on the snare, I've added a bit crusher. So it now sounds like that. You can hear it sounds a lot more distorted. On these toms, there's an echo boy, which is a delay. So it just gives it another sound. This white noise has got a pitch shifter on it. So the pitch of the white noise can go up a bit. This white noise here, but I've added a tremolo to it. It's got space designer, which is reverb, and then compression after the reverb. So the tremolo's just sending it left to right, and then the reverb's obviously making it sound a lot more wide and a lot more washier, and then the compression at the end is because it can suck the reverb, the compression can suck the reverb out a bit more, rather than doing it the other way around, rather than adding the compression and then the reverb, which is another technique you could do. So again, on the electro blip, I've added some reverb. And what I've done with this, as you can see here, I've automated it in and out. So there it is coming in again. And with the track, you've been messed around and lying down. It's over now. You've been cheating and telling me. It's difficult to tell in the track, but it just adds a little bit more movement in there, just so everything's not sitting still. And then also it's filtered in as well. We're using the Filter Freak. And then on this synth, I've filtered it coming in. And I've also used the linear EQ, which is just a low EQ. It's a Waves plugin, and I've just used that to take out some of the low end. So if I take that off, you can hear the bottom end there. And that's just taking out the bottom end, so it just makes it sound a bit cleaner in the mix. The sub bass here, it's got the max bass plugin on it, so that's what it's like without it, and that's what it's like without the compression as well. So So just adding them to adds a bit more weight to it. Another thing that I've done with the sub bass is I've side chained it. So basically when the kick hits, this compressor comes in, so you might be able to hear it. With the kick, it sounds like this. So every time the kick hits, there's a bit of compression. Now this just frees up more space for the kick, because the kick and the sub bass are fighting for space down at the bottom. So this means you can have the sub, and then when the kick comes in, the kick can punch through because the compression hits in. So it's difficult to tell. It's difficult to tell probably on using this microphone, but it does just make things sound a lot more tighter in the bottom end. And then the vocals was just left how they were. And I mastered this on the same Logic project. The reason why I did that is normally I master things on their own project, but because I'd only done a few little tweaks to this one, I thought it was just easier. And also as well, because I've got all the files here, if I start mastering it and find that something gets brought out too much in the mastering, then I've always got the option of turning it down here, rather than normally if you just got one audio file, you're more limited. So on this I used the Lin EQ, take out some of the bottom end, and then some multi-band compression. What I've done with the attacks and the releases is I've actually timed them into the BPM, which is 126 BPM. There is a formula you can use, which is 60 divided by the BPM times by 1000 divided by 8, and then if you use multiples of that, you can find that you can use them for the delay times and for compression times. So I've used that on the attack and the release on here. So the way I did this is I found the maximum ranges in each frequency band, and then that's where I used this as the threshold, and then I moved the range down to -3%, just to tighten up each individual little frequency range there. And then I've used the PlugTech EQ, which is an emulator of classic EQ. Now this really brings out some of the nice frequencies, and I've used it on the high and on the low. And then the final thing is I've used a limiter just to tighten everything up. And then what I tend to do is I use an analyzer, and I use an analyzer at the start and the end. I tend to use my own ears. It just gives you an idea about how your mix is going. So you can see the difference between the two. This one seems a lot wider, and also it's got a lot more you can see that in most frequency bands it's actually higher, but they're more leveled out. So I'll just show you quickly without the plugins on. One thing you'll notice it's a lot quieter, and that's because of the the limiter isn't on. So I put on all the plugins individually, and hopefully you'll be able to see the difference. And so that's how I made It's Over Now.